Good evening, this is Viewpoint. I'm Zakka Jacob. A Chinese espionage ship, the Yuan Wang 5, will be docking in the Sri Lankan port city of Hambantota. It's going to be there from the 11th of August till the 17th. India has taken grave exception to this, as it could affect India's cyber and space services. It could also be a direct threat to the Chennai and Tuticorin ports. Now, this is coming despite the fact that India was one of the countries that was standing at the forefront of helping Sri Lanka. India has extended more than $3.5 billion of aid to Sri Lanka in just the last few months. Of course, Sri Lanka's economy is broken, and of all the countries in the world right now, India has extended maximum help to Sri Lanka. The question is, why then is the Sri Lankan government allowing a Chinese spy ship to dock at Hambantota? What will it take to get Sri Lanka out of the Chinese ambit? But first, the story. All right, first I want to bring you up to speed with the Yuan Wang 5. It's an espionage ship. It's of the Yuan Wang class of fleet of ships that China has. This is the 5th generation of ships that it has. Basically, it is going to dock on the 11th of August in Hambantota. Remember, Hambantota used to be the fiefdom, the hometown of the former President Gotabaya Rajapaksa and his brother Mahinda Rajapaksa. It is going to dock on the 11th. It's going to stay there for 7 days till the 17th of August. Now remember, this is of concern to India because Hambantota from the Gulf of Mannar, which is right at the border between India and Sri Lanka, is barely 350 kilometers. This ship has a range of 750 kilometers, more than twice the distance between Hambantota and Mannar. So clearly, this is something that that India is concerned about. Let's go on to the next set of graphics that we have and why India is concerned about this particular ship. Remember, it's a latest generation, a 5th generation space tracking ship. India has taken grave exception to the fact that this can have a negative impact both on our space tracking abilities and also on ICBMs. And I think that is a big concern as well. Let's move on to the next point. The Yuan Wang, like I said, is a 5th generation ship. It's a spy ship. It can monitor satellite as well as ballistic missile launches. Remember, India does its ICBMs from Balasore in Odisha. It has rocket launches from that place as well. So that is something that India is particularly concerned about. This particular ship, the Yuan Wang 5, has an aerial reach of more than 750 kilometers, which basically means it can track all the way up to the northern coast of Tamil Nadu. Several southern areas can be snooped upon. The ports of Chennai, Tuticorin, etc. Can potentially face danger because of this. At least 6 southern ports from Cochin to Tuticorin, Chennai, 3 cities are under the radar, or at least under the reach, the aerial reach of this particular Yuan Wang 5. So the question that's being asked is, how can India respond to this? This is being raised at the highest level, but we're getting a piece of breaking news as well. While China is flexing its muscles in the subcontinent, it's also facing its own threat. CNN is now reporting that U.S. House Speaker Nancy Pelosi will be going ahead with her Taiwan visit. Remember, just a few days ago, Joe Biden, the U.S. president, and Xi Jinping, the Chinese president, had a 2-hour phone call just last week where the Chinese president had reportedly warned the U.S. against playing with fire over Taiwan. In fact, Joe Biden had said just a few days ago that the Pentagon thinks Nancy Pelosi going to Taiwan right now is not a good idea. But she has already begun her Asia visit with Singapore, and her office is now confirming that Taiwan is indeed part of that 4-nation trip that she's undertaking in Asia. China, of course, has taken grave exception to this. They've been responding through their Ministry of Foreign Affairs spokesperson that there will be a price to pay and so on and so forth. But I want to open this up to our guests now. Joining us, a full panel here on Viewpoint. Dr. Tara Karta is former director of the National Security Council Secretariat. Venus Upadhyay is senior researcher with the India and South Asia at Epoch Times. Einar Tangen is a senior fellow at the Tai He Institute. Lieutenant General retired PJ Spannu, defense expert, joining us. And Yasiraj Ranaraja is director of the Belt and Road Initiative of Sri Lanka. Let me start with Dr. Tarakarta. First things first, the fact that a Chinese espionage ship is going to be docking in Hambantota for a good week, India expressing its concerns, I'm given to understand, at the highest level. How should we respond to this?
I think you should do the same thing somewhere else. I mean, this is an extremely serious provocation, because as you said correctly, this is a ship of considerable, capabilities. It can map the whole areas inside India. And also, incidentally, it's worth mentioning that the INS, our new aircraft carrier, is also, dispatched from Karwar a couple of days ago. So it can do, that is one of the minor things it can do. It can do a lot more than that. It has come into Hambantota. I don't know how much. 70% of the stake is with the Chinese company. The rest, I'm assuming, is still Sri Lankan held. What capability Sri Lanka has to prevent it is unknown. I mean, at that time, if you remember, that Hambantota port itself was given, the money was taken, they used it to repay, to beef up their foreign exchange. So for the possibility that a large amount of money has been paid, we really don't know. But if these things are happening, and this is not the first time it's coming into Hambantota, but it's not at all the first time that Chinese survey ships are in this area. You know that they've been coming every year. There are high time that you responded in a like manner. I mean, you can't keep waiting till things get really bad. Let's also show that we can also, we are also in climate change. We are also looking at surveying the area. We are also interested in maritime, movement, everything. So you have every reason to do the same research somewhere else.
Lieutenant General Panu, I remember, I think it was in 2013 or 14, there was a Chinese submarine that had docked in southern Sri Lanka, and India had at that time raised very serious objection. Now they're sending a full-fledged ship. We're given to understand it's a fifth-generation ship, which has a reach of 750 kilometers, which, of course, basically puts under threat not only our ports, but also our cyber and space capabilities, and, of course, our ability to launch ICBMs. The question that's being asked is, how should India respond? Because is there anything that India can do to impress upon the Sri Lankan authorities that this is absolutely uncalled for, this is unacceptable for India?
For India, Sri Lanka being a vital island, very close, where our strategic interests in the Indian Ocean, and as the world looks at it as the Indo-Pacific area. The Chinese have no business to be in an area which is close to the Indian national waters and the area of influence of the Indian Navy. The reconnaissance ship coming here, and in 2014, there was a nuclear submarine which came and docked there.
Correct.
We reacted to it very sharply because it directly impinges on our national security interests in Sri Lanka. China has been using death trap to ring, around us a string of pearls. And in string of pearls, they have usually tried to weaken all a neighbor. In the neighborhood, first they weaken them, then they lower them into the debt, and then in this particular case today, the state of Sri Lanka is that literally anybody, by offering some amount of money or offering some amount of mileage that they want in recovering of the economy, I think China has now used this opportunity to come and put this ship there. Now, this ship is not an ordinary ship. It is a reconnaissance ship which can actually monitor all our space activities, launch activities, satellite activities.
Correct.
And it is called Yuan Wang 5. And this ship is going to be brought here for almost 7 days. But it is not only the use of Hambantota, it is also the ship being located in this area. Even if it is not in Hambantota, it is going to be around in the Indian Ocean.
Correct.
And it will monitor all our launch activities, all our satellite activities, all our space activities, all our missile activities, whether it is trials or something.
Okay, let me also go across to Mr. Yasiru Ranaraja. He's the BRI Sri Lanka chapter chief. Mr. Ranaraja, the question that's being asked here in security circles in India is, obviously your country is going through a very tough time, and of all the countries in the world right now, India has extended maximum support. I'm given to understand that on this Chinese espionage ship, concerns have been raised to the highest level. The question then is, why is why is Sri Lanka allowing this ship to dock in Hambantota, and that too for an entire week?
Yes, Jacob, thank you for having me. So the message is really clear. Sri Lanka has no involvement with what China is doing with their Yuan Wang ships. But in the perspective of Sri Lanka have to abide by the international law. So if this ship is passing through innocent passage, and if this ship, if we are not able to process any evidence that this ship, as you call a spy ship, Sri Lankan authorities have no reason to reject it, because that would create much more conflict for Sri Lanka as small. So as you said, Sri Lanka is going through a crisis time. But India has always been a great support for Sri Lanka throughout ages, and we have culturally links to India. So the relationship has not moved anywhere from that. But we understand China is going through a rapid development. They have their own space programs running in their country. For that, they also need to move their vessels or process their space programs in accordance to the international law. So
Mr. Ranaraju, can I, just for clarification's sake, I know that the Hambantota port is on a 99-year lease. Many of those assets have been taken over by the Chinese. But are they not required to ask for the Sri Lankan government's permission? And is it not within the power of the Sri Lankan government and the maritime authorities there, if they feel there is a concern around the ship, and surely India does feel there is a concern around the ship, that they reject permission to the ship to dock?
Yes, Jacob. So this ship is not classified as a military ship even. First, I should say that it's a survey and tracking ship under the International Maritime Organization. Doesn't matter any ship, if it's Japanese, Chinese, German, any ship that is coming to Sri Lanka or even to Hambantota port should have a clearance from the Sri Lankan Navy. That Correct. Is not commercial vessels, that are military vessels or state-owned vessels by other countries. This is very clear. Indian ships have been in Hambantota, US ships have been in Hambantota, and Japanese ships have been in Hambantota. So the message is clear. Sri Lanka is not taking any sides here. Sri Lanka is going through its economic transformation, and China is a very sound partner for Sri Lanka. And Sri Lanka will always work with China.
How do you respond to what Mr. Ranaraja is saying? Venus Upadhyaya, how do you respond to what Mr. Yasiru Ranaraja of the BRI Sri Lanka chapter just said? He's saying that this is not a military ship. The way they see it, the Sri Lankan authorities, it doesn't pose a threat to them. And that's why permission has been given by the Sri Lankan Navy for this ship to dock. Venus Upadhyaya, can you hear me? All right, we'll try and see if we can fix that. Einar Tangen is also joining us. Einar, it comes back to a question of trust, and clearly right now, given the history of the last couple of years, particularly between India and China, the trust deficit is so bad that even 16 rounds of military talks have not led to any kind of satisfactory resolution of the standoffs that are happening in eastern Ladakh. In that background, to send a reconnaissance ship, and that too to a country that has been going through a fair amount of turmoil in the last 6 months, that is where suspicions are being raised here in India. How do you respond to that, to these suspicions?
Well, I mean, obviously the relationships are not very good. I mean, you could say the same things about the Quad. China has questions about why India is joining together with, groups who are antagonistic towards it. Both sides don't trust each other. But, quite frankly, this is much ado about nothing. The truth is that ship could be sailing in international waters 200 miles off your coast, and there's nothing that could be done about it. The fact that it's in a port makes no difference. Its tracking abilities are exactly the same. So this idea that it's parked there for 5 days is causing international stir in India is kind of silly.
You're saying it makes no difference if the ship is docked in Hambantota, 350 kilometers from the Indian maritime boundary, as it were, as opposed to it being 200 nautical miles away from Hambantota?
No, 200 miles away from your coast. They can sail in international waters, as can Indian ships. So, I mean, this idea that it's 350 miles away, if they want a closer look, they can get 200 miles away. I mean, look, it's not a real big issue. The issue here is the lack of trust. India wants to see this, that they have the right to tell another sovereign nation, Sri Lanka, what they can do. Obviously, Sri Lanka is in a very, very tenuous position because of their economy. You can blame it on China, but the fact is you're putting a tremendous amount of pressure, and it's asserting that you have the right to tell other nations what to do simply because they're near you. If that is in fact the case, then you're in essence putting forward your own kind of Monroe Doctrine. Without explicitly stating
you want to respond to that? Basically what Aina Tangent is saying, whether the ship docks or is out at sea, it has the same abilities if it is an espionage ship, and if it's being brought in for espionage purposes, it can do the same from 200 nautical miles away. It doesn't have to necessarily dock at Hambantota. So he claims it's, India is making a big deal of it.
I think there are some other very important concerns here that we need to bring into the context here, and more about the Hambantota port also. We all know that the port has been leased to the Chinese in 2017 for 99 years. But there's something that has happened in Sri Lanka since June. So there's a committee called COPE. It had a live interaction with the Sri Lankan port, the Hambantota Port Authority, and they found that the lease money of $1.2 billion that was paid, and it was done at that point of time because they said that they want to be able to service loan to the Chinese, so they were leasing the port to the Chinese. But then this committee found out that that money was not used to service loans to the Chinese. It was used for the expenditure of the Sri Lankan government. That is point one. The second point was the deal's accounts have disappeared. And this is there in the Sri Lankan media. Now, the very concerning thing is some of these reports have gone missing online. Some of the local reporters from Sri Lanka had shared these reports with me, so I have those reports with me. And I have a very in-depth report with me which talks about all these things. So as the panelist was just mentioning, that actually it's a matter of trust. And the trust is not there because there are very serious concerns, and those concerns are extremely valid. So the question that arises is there a specific intention behind the Hambantota port? Whatever has happened since 2017 between the Chinese and the Sri Lankan government, keeping in mind of whatever is there in the Sri Lankan media and the evaluation of the COPE committee, is there something serious to it? Is there something intentional to it? Is Hambantota port being deliberately given to the Chinese, or the Chinese manipulating larger state of affairs for taking siege of the Hambantota port? Those are my questions.
No, so Dr. Tarakarta, it comes back to, when the port was being developed, obviously this is the backyard of the Rajapakshas, it's their hometown. Obviously they wanted to bring in economic activity. Clearly, then the debt trap happened, the debt cycle happened, and now the Chinese have that port on lease for 99 years. The Sri Lankan government says that India's fears that it could eventually become some kind of a naval station for Chinese vessels is overblown.
I think Sri Lanka is still a sovereign country, right? It can do whatever it likes with whoever it likes. Number two, whatever assistance we've given it as a credit line, and we are bound to help as much as possible our neighbors. But let's take it. Let's keep it. Speaking undiplomatically, you do expect a quid pro quo. You expect them to honor your interest. The problem is what the gentleman from Sri Lanka said is partially right. The ship is traveling as a civilian ship. Earlier they used to be in, sort of what we call move in dark operations. They wouldn't radio signal. They would be clearly a suspicious ship. Now they're not doing that. They're saying we are a civilian ship. We are indulging in research. So on what basis will the Sri Lankans tell them, sorry, you can't come in? They still can. Like you said very correctly, it's still traversing Sri Lankan territorial waters, which still, as of yesterday, is in Sri Lanka Navy's hands. So they have the ability to stop it, but the question is whether at this time, understandably so, they are probably in a huge flux themselves.
So, Lieutenant Panu, has this, because it's coming at a time of economic flux for Sri Lanka, has this story sort of gone under the radar in a way that the Sri Lankan authorities didn't quite think through this? Or, as Mr. Ranaraju said, it's a civilian ship. the Sri Lankan Navy has to authorize which ship can dock in their ports and so on, and they don't find a threat from this ship, no matter what India's concerns are.
I think we have to go back to history, and that to recent history between India and China. In last 2.5 years, Chinese have been pushing the military on our northern borders. And also they have been carrying out naval activities in the South China Sea and extending towards the Indo-Pacific and Indian Ocean. Now, Indian suspicion, of course, is there because there is a history there. And then a ship coming there to gain information has certain security implications. It is not that they are coming there for a logistic basing or refueling. I mean, nobody minds a ship being docked for refueling only. But the point is that what will this ship do after it docks there for 7 days? Well, that is not the objection. The objection is that Hambantota is becoming a sort of a Chinese base as Djibouti. And therefore, they have made sure that along the sea lines of communication, they have built stations which are under Chinese control. Hambantota can be called a port under Chinese control. And therefore, Sri Lanka can do very little because it has given favors to Sri Lanka, whether it is debt or bailing them out by taking the port on lease. If they had not taken the port on lease, really speaking, Sri Lanka was in a spot. So today, Sri Lanka is in a spot. They can do very little about it.
Okay. All right. I'll give Mr. Ranaraju the final word. I'm just trying to understand if you appreciate the concern that India has that the Hambantota port now, for all practical purposes, if tomorrow China wants to convert it into some kind of a naval base, as they've done in Djibouti, they can very well do that because they have control of this port for the next 99 years.
I disagree. If you take a look at the company which rented the Hambantota port, it's China, the CM Port Holdings, which is a globally known company, and they have terminals in, they have 34 ports in 18 countries. They have a port in Houston, USA. They have a terminal in Port of Newcastle in Australia, the largest East Coast port. So Sri Lanka is working with China in economic terms. Sri Lanka need help right now. China got a lot of capital. Okay, before the Hambantota port, Sri Lanka went to India. India rejected. Okay, so diamond necklace. India now do a strategically military alliance called diamond necklace, something like that. So India, if has some concern about the safety, Sri Lanka will always respect that because we are in a pact called the Indo-Lanka Accord. So if there are any threat to Sri Lanka, India is free to come and invest the latest technologies here, put their latest tracking technologies here. Even we have started India-Sri Lanka maritime coordination centers in Sri Lanka. So we speak like we are strangers, but Sri Lanka and India are very good friends for generations, and our links have been there for years. But we are forgetting that based on these speculations on a ship that is coming to Sri Lanka, which is not in our concern because we can't tell China to limit their space program. Similarly, we can't tell Elon Musk to limit his space program as well. If they have ambitions to go to the moon, to go to the Mars, they have to run their programs internally. And one speaker also said about the Hambantota port, the money that we got out of the Hambantota port went missing. That is very wrong. There are enough and more articles online. If you do a research, the money that we got from the Hambantota port was not used to pay off the loan. It was used to pay off the other debt Sri Lanka, which are ISBs. ISBs are more bigger burden to Sri Lankan government than the Hambantota port.
I want to thank all our guests. Let's see how the story progresses. As of now, yes, India has raised its concerns, and I'm given to understand at the highest level. But whether or not this will lead to a physically or actively stopping this Chinese ship from docking in Hambantota, let's see. For the moment, I want to thank all our guests. I want to go across to another piece of breaking news that's coming in. TDP founder and former Andhra Pradesh Chief Minister N.T. Rama Rao's daughter, Uma Maheshwari, was today found hanging at her residence in Hyderabad. The police have shifted the body to a local government hospital for post-mortem. A case has been registered. The police will be probing death by suicide. We don't know if there was any kind of personal enmity or any kind of frayed relationship with anyone which led her to take this extreme step. What we do know is that her body was found hanging inside her home in Hyderabad. She's one of the daughters of the late TDP founder and former Chief Minister N.T. Rama Rao. In fact, Chandrababu Naidu, the former Chief Minister and the son-in-law of NTR, will be rushing to Uma Maheshwari's residence. So clearly, there is something there that has happened. It is death by suicide as of right now. Whether there was foul play involved, what was the possible reason for her to take this extreme step, that is what the police are investigating currently. All right, at least 8 people have been killed and 2 critically injured because of a massive fire that happened at a private hospital in Jabalpur in Madhya Pradesh. The deceased include 4 patients, 3 hospital staff and 1 attendant. The police have said that a short circuit was what led to the tragedy. Meanwhile, Madhya Pradesh Chief Minister Shivraj Singh Chauhan has announced an ex-gratia of 5 lakhs each for the next of kin of the deceased. The investigation is also underway to find out why and how this short circuit happened.
ये एक न्यू लाइफ हॉस्पिटल है, प्राइवेट हॉस्पिटल है, 30 बेडेड हॉस्पिटल है। आज है ना मतलब एक आग घटना हुई है। अभी तक है ना एडमिनिस्ट्रेशन के पास है ना 8 लोगों का है ना डेथ होने का है ना खबर है। मेडिकल कॉलेज में हम लोग ने कंफर्म किए हैं। 2 लोग है ना आईसीयू में है और 3 लोग है ना मेट्रो हॉस्पिटल में भर्ती थे, उसके एक का डिस्चार्ज कर दिया, 2 और भी है ना ठीक है। एंड लगातार हम लोग है ना पेशेंट्स का सिचुएशंस को भी है ना मॉनिटरिंग कर रहे हैं। एंड एडमिनिस्ट्रेशन की ओर से मतलब है ना माननीय मुख्यमंत्री महोदय से भी बात हुई है, उनका भी है ना मतलब आर्थिक सहायता देने के लिए ना घोषणा किया है। इसका तो पूरा जांच करना पड़ेगा, तभी है ना इसमें पता चलेगा। बट कहाँ तक है ना लोगों ने, आसपास के लोगों ने बताया कि जनरेटर्स में ना थोड़ा बस्ट हुआ है, मतलब है ना शॉर्ट सर्किट हुआ है टाइप का। अभी टोटल 8 लोगों का डेथ हुआ है, उसमें 3 लोग स्टाफ भी है, 5 लोग है ना पेशेंट्स हैं, 3 लोगों का स्टाफ है। इतना जानकारी है ना हमको मिली है और रिमेनिंग लोगों को है ना मतलब है ना पुलिस और है ना हमारी नगर निगम की है ना फायर सेफ्टी टीम ने सेफली है ना ऊपर है ना दरवाज़ा तोड़ करके है ना रेस्क्यू कराया गया है।
Let me go across to Manoj Sharma, who's joining us on the phone. Manoj, so the Jabalpur DM there giving details, it was a short circuit. The question also is, as the investigation goes into depths to find out what exactly caused the short circuit, I think the first response has also been sort of brought to question, because how was the fire allowed to flare up in such a big way that 8 people died?
Yeah, there are so many questions. In fact, we have been told by, eyewitnesses that there was some disruption in the power supply in the hospital, and after that, during that switchover process from general power to the to generator, they heard some noises. There was blast in the generator. So it seems that this short circuit caused by that blast in the generator may be the cause of this tragedy. But still, the state government has already ordered an inquiry. An inquiry it is already underway. But the district collector, he has confirmed 8 deaths. Still, there are 2 patients who are very critical. They have been shifted to other hospital there in Jabalpur. And now there are so many questions which are being raised, because this is the second incident in Madhya Pradesh in succession after Bhopal, where fire safety system, authorities, civic authorities, government authorities, they have to take care of fire safety system in all these hospitals.
Okay, we'll leave it at that. Manoj Sharma, thanks very much for joining us. 8 people, unfortunately, have perished in that accident. It includes 5 patients and 3 hospital staff. That's a wrap. In a moment, Ridhima will join you with the biggest exclusive tonight.